highly intelligent people don't become exceptional because they do more than everyone else. They often become exceptional because they refuse to do a few ordinary things that quietly drain judgment, emotional control, and long-term success. The habits we repeat every day shape the way we think, the decisions we make, and ultimately the life we create. If you unknowingly practice these 5 behaviors, they may be limiting your potential far more than you realize. Watch this video until the very end, because these aren't productivity tips or motivational clichés. They're psychology-backed patterns that separate reactive minds from reflective ones. And by the end, you may recognize one habit that could completely change the way you think and live. Most people think intelligence is about how much you know. They think it is about your IQ score, your college degree, or how quickly you can solve a math problem. But here is what the research actually shows. The behaviors that separate truly intelligent people from everyone else are not about what they do. They are about what they absolutely refuse to do. And some of these will surprise you. Stay with me until the very end, because the 5th thing on this list is something almost every person on Earth does daily without ever realizing how deeply it is holding them back. Let us get one thing clear before we begin. Real intelligence does not show up in a test score. It shows up in how a person thinks, communicates, makes decisions, and navigates the world every single day. According to research published in the Journal of Intelligence and Cognitive Psychology, highly intelligent individuals demonstrate specific behavioral patterns that set them apart from the general population. And the most revealing part is not what they do. It is what they consistently choose not to do. These are not habits they were taught. These are natural tendencies that emerge from how their minds process the world. Let us walk through all 5. 1. They never pretend to know things they do not actually know. Pay close attention to this one because it is more powerful than it sounds. When most people are asked a question they cannot answer, they do one of 3 things. They make something up. They give a vague response that sounds knowledgeable but says nothing. Or they deflect the question entirely because admitting I don't know feels like admitting weakness. Highly intelligent people do the exact opposite. They have absolutely no problem saying, I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I need to look into that before I give you an accurate answer. And here is why. Because they understand that pretending to know something you do not is far more foolish than admitting a gap in your knowledge. Their confidence does not come from appearing to know everything. It comes from knowing exactly what they know and being fully honest about what they do not. Gaps in knowledge do not threaten them. They see them as open doors, not closed walls. This is what researchers call intellectual humility, and it is one of the clearest signs of genuine intelligence because it shows that a person values truth and accuracy far more than their ego or how others perceive them. 2. They never engage in pointless arguments or fight to win every debate. Think carefully about this one because it reveals something profound. When you see someone who argues about everything, who always needs to be right, who turns every single conversation into a competition they must win, you are not watching intelligence. You are watching insecurity. Truly intelligent people choose their battles with extreme care. They do not waste mental energy trying to convince someone who has already decided not to change their mind. They do not feel compelled to correct every wrong statement they hear. They do not engage with people who are arguing in bad faith or who are not genuinely interested in finding the truth. Why? Because they understand a fundamental difference. Some conversations are productive and lead to mutual learning. Others are just ego battles that consume energy and produce nothing. Intelligent people can tell the two apart immediately. When they do engage in a discussion, it is because they genuinely want to explore ideas, understand a different perspective, or arrive at a better conclusion, not because they need to prove they are smarter than someone else. Here's where things get truly interesting. In today's world, information is everywhere. You can watch a YouTube video, skim a Wikipedia article, scroll through a few posts on social media, and walk away feeling like you have learned something. Most people do exactly this, and then speak with full confidence about topics they have barely scratched the surface of. But highly intelligent people have a completely different relationship with knowledge. They understand the difference between exposure and mastery, between knowing about something and actually understanding it deeply. They do not watch one documentary about physics and then feel qualified to debate physicists. They do not read one article about psychology and suddenly think they can diagnose everyone around them. Psychologists call this epistemic humility. It means they understand how much they do not know, even in the areas where they do have genuine knowledge. They recognize that real expertise takes years of study, practice, and lived experience. And they respect that process deeply. This makes them perpetual students of life, always learning, always questioning, always digging deeper, but never pretending they have arrived at complete understanding. 3. They never make major decisions based purely on emotions in the moment. Notice the words purely and in the moment, because this distinction matters enormously. Highly intelligent people are not emotionless robots. They feel things deeply. They have strong emotional responses. They absolutely consider their emotions when making decisions. But here is what they do not do. They do not let a temporary emotional state dictate a major life decision. When they are angry, they do not send that email, make that phone call, or start that confrontation. When they are excited, they do not immediately commit to something without thinking through the consequences. When they are sad or discouraged, they do not make permanent decisions based on feelings that are temporary. Neuroscientists call this emotional regulation. It is the ability to feel an emotion fully without being controlled by it. Intelligent people create space between the feeling and the action. They ask themselves questions like, will I feel the same way about this tomorrow? What about next week? What about 6 months from now? They understand that emotions carry important information about what matters to them. But that information needs to pass through rational thought before it becomes action. This does not make them cold. It makes them wise, because they avoid the kind of regret that comes from impulsive decisions made at emotional peaks and valleys. 4. They never surround themselves with people who only agree with them. This one is counterintuitive, and it catches most people off guard. Human beings naturally seek comfort, validation, and agreement. We gravitate toward people who think like us, share our values, and confirm what we already believe. Highly intelligent people actively choose the opposite. They want people in their lives who will disagree with them respectfully. People who will point out flaws in their reasoning. People who bring perspectives they had not considered. People who challenge their assumptions and push them to think more carefully. Because they understand something most people miss. Growth does not happen inside an echo chamber. You do not become smarter by surrounding yourself with people who tell you that you are right about everything. You become smarter by engaging with people who make you defend your ideas, refine your thinking, and sometimes completely change your mind. Highly intelligent people are not threatened by being proven wrong. They are energized by it because it means they just learned something new and upgraded their understanding. Psychologist Carol Dweck calls this a growth mindset. The belief that intelligence is not a fixed trait to protect, but a living thing that grows through effort and challenge. This makes intelligent people incredibly intentional about who they spend time with. Not in an arrogant way, in a deeply purposeful way. They seek people who elevate their thinking, not people who simply make them feel smart. 5. They never mistake busyness for productivity or confuse activity with achievement. This is the one that will change how you look at your own daily life. We live in a culture that glorifies being busy. People brag about how packed their schedule is, how many hours they work, how they barely have time to breathe. Somehow, being exhausted has become a status symbol. But highly intelligent people see through this completely. They understand that being busy and being effective are two entirely different things. They know that working 80 hours a week on the wrong things accomplishes less than working 20 focused hours on the right things. They prioritize ruthlessly. They concentrate on high-impact activities that actually move them toward meaningful goals. And they say no to everything else, even if those things look important or urgent to other people. The management thinker Peter Drucker put it perfectly. Efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things. Most people are obsessed with efficiency, getting more done faster, optimizing every minute, multitasking constantly. But intelligent people are obsessed with effectiveness, making absolutely sure that what they are doing actually matters before they worry about how to do it faster. This means they often appear less busy than others. They have more free time, more space to think, more capacity to be fully present, because they are not burning energy on activities that lead nowhere. They understand that rest, reflection, and unstructured time are not luxuries. They are essential ingredients of creativity, clear thinking, and sustainable performance. When you put all 5 of these together, a clear picture emerges. Highly intelligent people are not trying to appear smart. They are trying to be accurate. They are not trying to win arguments. They are trying to discover what is true. They are not pretending to know everything. They are staying honest about how much there is still to learn. They are not letting emotions run their decisions. They are using emotions as useful information, then thinking carefully before acting. They are not surrounding themselves with people who agree with everything they say. They are seeking out challenge, friction, and growth. And they are not confusing motion with progress. They are focusing their energy on what actually matters. This is what creates people who are not only intellectually capable, but emotionally mature, socially grounded, and genuinely effective in everything they pursue. True intelligence is not loud. It does not need to announce itself. It shows up quietly in the habits, the boundaries, and the decisions that most people never even notice. The question is not whether you are intelligent. The question is, which of these 5 things are you still doing? And what happens when you finally stop? If this hit you somewhere real, share it with one person in your life who needs to hear it. And drop a comment below telling me which of the 5 resonated with you most, because that conversation is exactly the kind that makes everyone in it a little smarter. Another pattern quietly connects every habit we've discussed, and it's something most people never notice. Highly intelligent people are remarkably comfortable delaying immediate gratification. They don't feel compelled to react instantly, speak instantly, buy instantly, or decide instantly. In a world that rewards speed, they value precision. Before responding, they pause. Before forming an opinion, they gather context. Before committing to something important, they allow time for reflection. That small pause may look insignificant from the outside, but psychologically, it changes everything. It gives the rational part of the brain time to catch up with the emotional part, allowing wiser decisions to emerge. Behavioral psychologists often describe this as response inhibition, the ability to resist an immediate impulse in favor of a better long-term outcome. It's one of the strongest predictors of sound judgment because it prevents temporary emotions, social pressure, or passing excitement from taking control. While many people confuse quick reactions with confidence, intelligent people recognize that thoughtful restraint is often a far greater strength than immediate certainty. You'll also notice that highly intelligent people rarely make their identity dependent on being right. This is a subtle distinction, but it's one of the most powerful psychological differences between wisdom and ego. If your identity depends on always being correct, every disagreement feels like a personal attack. Every mistake becomes embarrassing. Every correction feels humiliating. But when your identity is built around learning instead of proving yourself, mistakes become valuable. They reveal blind spots that would otherwise remain hidden. This mindset dramatically changes the way intelligent people receive feedback. They don't automatically accept criticism, but they don't automatically reject it either. Instead, they ask themselves a simple question. Is there something useful here that I couldn't see on my own? Even criticism delivered poorly may contain a valuable observation. They separate the message from the messenger, Rather than becoming defensive, they become curious. That curiosity allows them to grow continuously, while others remain trapped, protecting an image they've created of themselves. Another fascinating habit is their relationship with silence. Many people feel uncomfortable when conversations pause for even a few seconds. They rush to fill every gap with words, opinions, or jokes because silence feels awkward. Highly intelligent people rarely feel this pressure. They understand that silence often improves communication rather than weakening it. A thoughtful pause allows ideas to settle. It gives everyone involved time to think instead of merely reacting. Some of the most meaningful conversations happen because someone resisted the urge to speak immediately. Communication researchers have found that reflective listening consistently produces stronger relationships than constant talking. Intelligent people instinctively understand this. They listen to understand before they listen to respond. While others are mentally preparing their next sentence, they're still processing what the other person is actually trying to communicate. This creates conversations where people feel genuinely heard rather than merely interrupted. You may have also noticed that highly intelligent people don't become overly attached to first impressions. Human beings naturally categorize people within seconds. We assume we know someone's character, abilities, or intentions almost immediately. But intelligent individuals recognize how unreliable these snap judgments can be. They leave room for revision. They understand that every person carries experiences, struggles, and motivations that aren't immediately visible. Instead of asking, "Who is this person?" they continue asking, "What haven't I understood yet?" That openness protects them from unnecessary prejudice and allows them to build more accurate understanding over time. Psychologists studying cognitive bias consistently find that our brains prefer certainty over accuracy. We enjoy reaching conclusions quickly because uncertainty feels uncomfortable. Intelligent people actively resist this tendency. They would rather have an incomplete answer than a confidently incorrect one. This willingness to tolerate uncertainty often makes them appear slower to form opinions. But when they finally do reach a conclusion, it's usually built upon much stronger reasoning. There's another misconception worth addressing. Many people believe intelligence automatically leads to success. Reality is far more complicated. Intelligence provides potential, but habits determine outcomes. A brilliant mind without discipline, humility, emotional regulation, or good judgment rarely reaches its full potential. That's why the 5 habits we've explored matter so much. They're not isolated behaviors. Together, they create a mindset capable of adapting, learning, and improving over an entire lifetime. The remarkable thing is that none of these habits require extraordinary talent. They aren't reserved for geniuses or gifted individuals. They're choices. Choosing honesty over pretending, choosing curiosity over certainty, choosing thoughtful reflection over impulsive reaction, choosing growth over ego, choosing meaningful progress over endless busyness. Repeated every day, those choices quietly transform the way a person thinks, relates to others, and approaches life itself. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson psychology teaches us about intelligence. It isn't a finish line that some people cross while others never reach. It's an ongoing process of refining the way we observe, question, learn, and respond to the world around us. The smartest people rarely believe they've finished growing. In fact, their willingness to remain students for life may be the clearest sign of their intelligence. And while that attitude may never attract the loudest applause, it consistently produces something far more valuable. Wisdom that continues expanding long after knowledge alone reaches its limits. One final characteristic quietly ties all of these behaviors together, and it's perhaps the rarest quality of all. Highly intelligent people are far less interested in protecting their image than they are in improving their understanding. That difference may sound small, but it completely changes the way they move through life. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to learn rather than perform. Every challenge becomes feedback rather than failure. Every mistake becomes information rather than embarrassment. They are not asking themselves, how do I look? They're asking, what can I learn from this? That single shift in perspective keeps their minds flexible while everyone else is busy defending fixed identities. This also explains why intelligent people rarely compare themselves obsessively to others. Comparison is an endless game because there will always be someone who appears more successful, more attractive, wealthier, or more accomplished. Chasing that comparison consumes enormous mental energy without producing meaningful growth. Instead, highly intelligent people compare themselves to an earlier version of themselves. Are they thinking more clearly than they did last year? Have they become more patient, more disciplined, more emotionally balanced? Those are the comparisons that actually lead to improvement because they remain within a person's control. Researchers studying psychological well-being consistently find that internally focused goals create greater life satisfaction than externally focused ones. When your attention is centered on becoming wiser rather than simply looking impressive, your progress no longer depends on someone else's approval. It becomes self-sustaining. Every small improvement creates motivation for the next one. Learning stops feeling like an obligation and starts becoming part of your identity. You'll also notice that highly intelligent people rarely underestimate the power of small habits. They understand that extraordinary lives are rarely built through extraordinary moments alone. More often, they're built through ordinary decisions, repeated consistently over many years. Reading 10 pages every day may not seem significant. Pausing before reacting may not seem life-changing. Spending 15 quiet minutes reflecting every evening may appear almost insignificant. Yet over months and years, these small actions reshape the brain through a process psychologists call neuroplasticity, the brain's remarkable ability to reorganize itself through repeated experience. Every thoughtful choice strengthens pathways that make future thoughtful choices easier. This is why intelligence often appears effortless from the outside. People see the final result without seeing the thousands of invisible repetitions that created it. They admire someone's calmness during conflict without witnessing the years they spent learning emotional regulation. They admire someone's wisdom without seeing the countless books, conversations, failures, and reflections that gradually refined their thinking. They admire someone's confidence without realizing it was built one difficult decision at a time, rather than appearing overnight. Another important distinction is that intelligent people don't confuse confidence with certainty. Real confidence isn't believing you'll always be right. It's believing you'll be able to learn even when you're wrong. That kind of confidence is incredibly resilient because it doesn't collapse the moment reality proves you mistaken. Instead, it adapts. It updates. It grows stronger because it's built upon learning rather than perfection. Modern psychology increasingly supports this perspective. Studies on cognitive flexibility repeatedly show that individuals willing to revise their beliefs when presented with better evidence tend to make better long-term decisions. They're less vulnerable to confirmation bias, less trapped by outdated assumptions, and more capable of adjusting to changing circumstances. In other words, their strength isn't that they never make mistakes. Their strength is that they don't become attached to mistakes simply because admitting them would hurt their pride. Perhaps that's why genuinely intelligent people often appear surprisingly humbled, not because they underestimate themselves, but because the more deeply they explore any subject, the more they realize how vast it truly is. Every answer reveals new questions. Every discovery uncovers another layer of complexity. Instead of making them insecure, this realization fills them with curiosity. They understand that wisdom doesn't come from reaching the end of knowledge. It comes from appreciating that learning never truly ends. When you step back and look at all 5 habits together, a deeper pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Highly intelligent people aren't defined by extraordinary talent alone. They're defined by extraordinary discipline in the way they think. They protect their attention. They question their assumptions. They regulate their emotions. They welcome honest feedback. They prioritize meaningful work over meaningless activity. Individually, each habit seems simple. Together, they create a mind that remains calm under pressure, open in the face of uncertainty, and committed to truth even when the truth is uncomfortable. And perhaps that's the biggest misconception about intelligence. Most people imagine it's something you're born with, something fixed from childhood that never really changes. But psychology paints a far more hopeful picture. While natural ability certainly plays a role, the quality of your thinking is shaped every single day by the habits you choose to practice and, just as importantly, by the habits you choose to leave behind. In the end, intelligence isn't simply about having the right answers. It's about developing the character to keep asking better questions for the rest of your life. There's another reason these 5 habits matter so much. They protect one of your most valuable resources, your attention. Modern psychology increasingly recognizes attention as one of the defining currencies of human performance. Wherever your attention consistently goes, life gradually follows. If your attention is constantly pulled toward unnecessary drama, endless comparison, impulsive reactions, and meaningless distractions, your thinking slowly becomes fragmented. But highly intelligent people guard their attention with surprising discipline. They understand that every unnecessary argument, every pointless distraction, and every hour spent chasing things that don't matter carries an invisible cost. This explains why they often seem more focused than everyone else. Focus isn't simply the ability to concentrate. It's the ability to eliminate what deserves no concentration at all. Most people ask themselves, how can I do more? Intelligent people often ask a very different question. What can I stop doing? That question is remarkably powerful because success is often determined less by what you add and more by what you remove. Every unnecessary commitment eliminated creates space for something meaningful. Every distraction removed strengthens clarity. Every habit abandoned frees energy for work that actually matters. Psychologists studying decision fatigue have repeatedly demonstrated that the human brain has a limited capacity for deliberate decision-making each day. Every small choice consumes mental resources. What should I wear? Should I respond to this message? Should I argue with this person? Should I check social media again? Individually, these decisions seem insignificant. Collectively, they drain enormous amounts of cognitive energy. Highly intelligent people simplify wherever possible. They automate small choices so their best thinking remains available for important ones. Another fascinating quality is their willingness to leave questions unanswered until enough evidence exists. Most people feel an intense psychological pressure to immediately explain everything. If something unexpected happens, they rush toward the first explanation that feels emotionally satisfying. Intelligent people are more patient. They recognize that incomplete information naturally leads to incomplete conclusions. Rather than filling gaps with assumptions, they're comfortable saying, I don't know yet. That patience protects them from countless unnecessary mistakes because reality often becomes much clearer with time. You may also notice that highly intelligent people don't confuse confidence with volume. The loudest voice in a room is rarely the wisest one. Genuine confidence doesn't require constant demonstration. It doesn't interrupt. It doesn't dominate every discussion. It doesn't feel threatened by silence. Instead, it listens carefully, contributes thoughtfully, and speaks when there's something meaningful to add. Ironically, this often causes intelligent people to be underestimated initially. In cultures that reward speed and certainty, thoughtful restraint can look like hesitation. But over time, people begin recognizing that their words consistently carry weight precisely because they aren't spoken carelessly. One of the most overlooked habits of intelligent people is their relationship with failure itself. They don't spend nearly as much time asking, who is to blame, as they do asking, what is this teaching me? Blame keeps attention trapped in the past. Learning redirects attention toward the future. This doesn't mean they ignore responsibility or pretend mistakes don't matter. Quite the opposite. They examine mistakes honestly because they understand that every failure contains information unavailable through success alone. Research on expertise repeatedly supports this principle. Elite performers across almost every field improve not because they avoid errors, but because they analyze errors with extraordinary precision. They don't merely experience failure, they study it. They ask what assumptions proved inaccurate, what variables they overlooked, and what changes would produce better outcomes next time. This mindset transforms setbacks from personal defeats into educational experiences. Another quiet distinction is that intelligent people rarely become emotionally attached to appearances. They care far more about substance than presentation. They're less interested in sounding intelligent than in understanding accurately. Less interested in looking successful than in building something meaningful. Less interested in collecting admiration than in earning genuine respect. These priorities may not produce immediate recognition, but over years, they create something far more enduring: credibility. People learn that when this person speaks, they have usually thought carefully. When they make a promise, they usually keep it. When they express an opinion, it's typically grounded in reflection rather than impulse. Perhaps that's why truly intelligent people often appear calmer than expected. Calmness isn't simply a personality trait. It's frequently the byproduct of clear thinking. When you've learned to separate facts from assumptions, temporary emotions from lasting truths, and urgent problems from important ones, the world naturally becomes less overwhelming. Challenges still exist. Difficult emotions still arise. But your mind no longer treats every inconvenience as a catastrophe. Instead, it approaches problems methodically, one decision at a time. If there's one lesson connecting everything we've explored, it's this: intelligence is far less about possessing extraordinary abilities than it is about consistently practicing extraordinary judgment. Every day presents hundreds of opportunities to react impulsively, defend your ego, seek unnecessary approval, or waste attention on things that don't deserve it. Highly intelligent people aren't immune to those temptations. They've simply trained themselves through repeated conscious choices not to surrender to them. And over years, those seemingly ordinary decisions quietly shape an extraordinary mind. If you noticed yourself in some of these habits, don't be too quick to label yourself as highly intelligent. That's not the purpose of this video. Psychology reminds us that intelligence isn't something we prove to other people. It's something we quietly develop through the choices we make every single day. The 5 habits we've explored all point to one deeper principle. Highly intelligent people don't simply think differently. They protect the quality of their thinking. They refuse to let ego replace curiosity. They refuse to let emotions make permanent decisions. They refuse to confuse being busy with making progress. And perhaps most importantly, they never stop learning, because they understand that the moment you believe you've learned everything is the moment you stop growing. The world often celebrates the loudest voices, the fastest opinions, and the people who always seem certain. But real intelligence is usually much quieter. It listens more than it speaks. It asks questions instead of making assumptions. It admits when it's wrong instead of defending mistakes. And it chooses truth over pride, even when the truth is uncomfortable. What makes these habits so powerful is that none of them require extraordinary talent. You don't need a genius-level IQ to practice intellectual humility. You don't need a prestigious degree to regulate your emotions. You don't need natural brilliance to seek honest feedback or to focus on what truly matters. These are decisions available to every one of us, every single day. And that's encouraging, because it means intelligence is not just something you're born with. It's something you strengthen through repeated choices. Every time you choose curiosity over certainty, reflection over reaction, growth over ego, and purpose over distraction, you're training your mind to think more clearly and live more wisely. So don't ask yourself, am I highly intelligent? Ask yourself a better question. Which one of these 5 habits can I start practicing today? Because in the end, your future won't be shaped by what you know right now. It will be shaped by the way you continue to think learn, and grow from this moment forward. If this video challenged the way you see intelligence, share it with someone who values growth over ego and learning over appearances. You never know. One thoughtful conversation can change the direction of someone's entire life. Thank you for watching. And remember, the smartest people aren't the ones who know the most. They're the ones who never stop improving the way they think. See you in the next video.